Greetings and welcome to the energy of Pisces. This is Ron from Tarot of the Twin Sun. Tarot of the Twin Sun is a functional division within the Order of the Twin Sun. Please take only what you will. Now, we'll go ahead and get started with a reading for October, that's 2022. And this reading is for the energy of Pisces. We'll be focusing primarily on Neptune, as well as possibly the Moon, as well as Mercury, which actually defines your seventh house, okay? Now, the interesting thing is that there's a gross realization to what you can devote your time into in terms of criticism, okay? Latent criticism, not being able to find a way to think into the right mode of thinking when dealing with the abstract, when dealing with a selfless part of you that is actually embodying itself. There is a latency in actually, at least from an esoteric standpoint, something about the subtle body is latently returning from astral traveling. Okay, that's a theme that I'm seeing in terms of Pisces. Okay, so there may be a little bit more of a delay into the opening part of October, and then within a few hours Mercury should go direct as you approach October. So there might be a gross realization in terms of the mirror that manifests, that's supposed to at least give a sense of self-critical acclaim in your explorations, okay, in your explorations of the self, in believing in yourself, as well as coming to the mirror and seeing what you truly are. Now, the nature of the mirror, at least from a scientific optical standpoint, and from a mystical understanding of what is a reflection in terms of time and space and how it stretches, actually points to a delay. There is an actual delay. Every time you look into a mirror, there is a delay according to the speed of light in which your reflection actually shows you what you really are in terms of now. Okay, so there already is, in a way of trying to address oneself, a latency in terms of your own self-representation of spiritually who you are on an auric level, how you radiate, is actually in delay, meaning that you're already looking into the past as you look into the present state of things, at least in terms of a reflection. So the lesson of this is that there's a possibility of, with the direct motion of Mercury, coming into realization of healing that it could occur in terms of your relationships, especially in your relationship with others who are indicative of who you pull in, generally speaking, in which there's a need for them to harmonize with others in a fixed way and also a cardinal way to address and harmonize and to alleviate relationships that they are devoted to. So a lot of friends that you have, particularly 1, 2, or 3 of them, relationships that you have in terms of an economical or social level, are trying to reach a harmonic equilibrium, okay? And there's difficulty in all this, and that there needs to be a type of ego death or a sacrifice when it comes to other people and how they owe you a blessing, or they owe you something in terms of a dream, or in terms of your own mystical approach to doing things that may not be understood on a collective level, or at least in a level that you see in terms of a reflection of others who may be critical on you, and you reflect this sort of self-criticism because of the delay of the image that comes through the mirror. Okay, that's a mouthful. Now, with Neptune in retrograde, okay, there are things that you can benefit from in terms of the transformation of structures on a collective level. These are ways of thinking, blocks of thinking, things that we are committed to in terms of the progress of moksha, of liberation, of coming to spiritual attunement of some sort. There is a delay, and this has to do with transformation of systems that already exist, that are on the path to ultimate freedom or dissolution in terms of the movement of Pluto in retrograde and Saturn in retrograde in the cusps of Capricorn and Aquarius in the 11th and 12th houses. Okay, so what this means for you is that there may be some sort of emotional resonance that is tied to socialistic norms or business ideas or collective influence, okay? Memetics, the idea that we can represent through the dissemination or the exploration of social structures and business models and ways of doing things in order to alleviate or free up old forms of karma that are socialistically designed. There's an ability for you to essentially come up with this natural way of letting the delayed happen, to know that these things that we think we are doing in the present are actually part of the past and the Akash. They are actually reflections of things already recorded or things that are going to be recorded that are sort of fatalistic or determined in some sort of way. Okay, not to cause any fear or anything like that, but it has to do with a sense of closure of the outdated, as well as the sense of failure when it comes to our own entrepreneurial spiritualisms, our own ambitions on a spiritual level, our own egos on a spiritual level, and how these are essentially ridiculous in nature. You can't expect to have these contradictions of spiritual egoism or spiritual crystallization, in which we can slap a business model on it and call it, a day. So this is something that has to be understood, because Pisces is primarily it's the end of the zodiac. It's essentially the end of exploration from Sagittarius into Capricorn, the solidity of karmas that we put forward in terms of our own truths that crystallize on a collective level and become spiritual attunement, which is losing all of that, okay? Losing the whole narrative and the whole sort of archetypal movement, the storyline of the zodiac. And that is a beautiful thing. At the same time, there are failures when it comes to this particular lineage. And there's a need to understand that even our own collective ways of doing things, even though there may be some sort of difficulty in truly bringing forward structures that are here to be sustainable, to last the test of time, as well as to leap forward into the future. This type of evolution requires steps back sometimes, redos or renewals of certain contracts that happen to be in the path of the adept, or the path of the initiate in terms of ascension. Now, with Jupiter and Saturn being in retrograde, in your 12th and first houses, it may feel like there's a lack of inspiration or a lack of a guru of some sort. They are out there, but they also have their own follies. There's something about the leaders in general that have to do with the energy of Pisces, that actually have to do with their own limitations, that is mirrored by leaders having, sort of falling out in some sort of way. With Saturn in retrograde in the 12th house, for example, in Aquarius, we have a queen figure who has fallen out of the race in terms of her own longevity. Queen Elizabeth, recently died, for example. As well, we have Jupiter in retrograde in the first house in Aries, so a lot of our own entrepreneurial sort of newness in terms of the great kings of the zodiac of Saturn and Jupiter. There is difficulty in actually having faith in your own leadership, or in leaders that have passed, that have been, figureheads. A matriarch, for example, has fallen. And regardless of how you color her, she still is a woman who has fallen in terms of her leadership, even though it was archetypally designed in the first place. It's something more of a symbolic gesture as opposed to a realism. Now, what may be occurring in terms of this is a shift that occurs and blocks towards a shift in how there are certain things that we are contractually sort of applying ourselves to in terms of business and survivability, that may be coming through a lot of duress these days. Difficulty in actually maintaining financial means is pointed to, and there's difficulty in terms of innovations that are occurring on a collective level in terms of technology, as well as the rise of anything that is humanistic in nature, that is designed to elevate humans. For example, a jetpack was recently, the kind that you strap onto your back and you can fly around on, has recently been released in terms of a demo. and you can find it online somewhere in terms of reels and stuff like that. Things are, as well as a flying bike, a flying bicycle. There are things that have to do with the future, and essentially these embodying our own past projections into the future of what we should be doing in terms of our technology. But does that really have a purpose? There's something about it that has to do with the more basic needs of subtlety, of pleasure, as well as of something that we can actually digest on a realistic level, on a practical level, that are being pointed to right now in terms of the dragon's head, the North Node, Rahu in Taurus, conjunct Uranus in retrograde, conjunct Fortune, Pars Fortune. And the thing is that you will be sort of seeing a lot of people come into your life that may not be thinking about supporting you, but will support you on an intellectual level that they haven't really defined yet. A lot of your friends will have this sort of need to perhaps bring forward a sense of mental clarity that should be emerging in the month of October for you, and that's a very good thing. At the same time, there's difficulty in seeing the blessings of a lot of relationships in terms of disharmony that is with Venus in its domicile, one of its domiciles in Libra, conjunct the Sun, which is actually of higher degree. And essentially there's a lot of ego death that will occur that will challenge the natural sort of definition that you are trying to achieve. Like if you are also sacrificing your ego, you're sacrificing a sense, or if others are sacrificing their ego, or they're being befuddled, there's something about the way they think, the way they do things on a relationship level that is being sort of saturated by the sun's energy. There's this purification process, and with that there is a loss of ego, but then with that there's a loss of willpower. And the idea here is to give you a sense of hope that something can occur in terms of the change that is happening on a socialistic level, on a grander level, on a humanistic level. And this is something very beautiful to achieve. A lot of what we are seeing in terms of media and in terms of technological influence, and influence in general, there's something about it that has to do with our own representations on say social media platforms, and how these are quite ridiculous in terms of expectations to be had, and to see on an analytic level how things almost feel like they are not resonant with what we should truly be doing with this type of technology. There is a backtrack with all of this. Now, one of the things that I will highlight is this square that occurs on the 1st of October between Neptune retrograde, Mars, as well as Venus in retrograde, and the Moon. Okay. Activating for you your first house, the third house, as well as the seventh and the ninth house. Okay, so truth is ultimately what could be had to define the self by actually finding a voice, or actively making a voice, vocalizing something in terms of karma, in terms of activation, the activated links between friends and your most immediate environment, trying to understand the relationships in all of those, and also coming to a higher mind and a gross realization of these things potentially. There's a lot of squares and oppositions in this, 2 oppositions and 4 squares that have to do with this grand square here, and it activates essentially a lot of how you self-represent in terms of friendships, or your family environment, or your home, and how this relates to the outer world. And there's difficulty in uniting a sense of what you can do in terms of all of that. With the moon in Sagittarius activating your MC, for example, your 9th and 10th houses, there is difficulty in actually sort of grounding yourself after exploring the ether, exploring your goals and ambitions, your higher modes of mental or spiritual inclinations, in which insight or deep truths can come in. There's been difficulty in actually manifesting the right karmas with that, having the right relationships to back that up, in terms of not being overly critical with others, or them being critical for no reason. There's a sense of ego death and all of that, and gross realization can occur in terms of your own creativity and bringing forward a dream of yourself yourself, an expectation of yourself that is looking back into the past, seeing how projections of yourself have been designed in a dream that has been false or fabricated in some sort of way. There's a lot of fog that is occurring that can eventually find some sort of levity, okay? This is by spiritual realization, by spiritual retracing of things that are not working, by coming up with witty or ingenious ways in order to express your own humanity by addressing karmas that you may have found on your explorations and are now indebted to in order to bring forward a sense of perfection or a voice or a way to manipulate using your hands and using your own sort of elucidation, the ability to speak properly in order to come up with the clarity that you so seek. Once Mercury goes direct, there's going to be less of this square, and this is a beautiful thing for October in the later days. Now, one thing I can say is that you should look to your communities, look to other people, but they will support you in ways that are not definable, that are abstract, and you have to sort of see the blessing of it in due time. The mystery here is finding harmonics with others by becoming independent, by having faith in the collective, and this will essentially grant some sort of boon in the future. This is all I have for now for the time being for the energy of Pisces. I do wish you well. Please take care now, and I shall see you in the future. Thank you. Bye-bye.